go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining our webinar today. The topic is Improve Direct Mail Results up to 20% and more. If you have questions during the presentation, just enter them into the dialog box on the right. We're going to go ahead and have a Q&A session at the end. So before we dive in, I just want to reinforce our commitment to you. At Satori, we believe in offering our customers best practices, providing relevant industry information, offering simple solutions to big problems, and giving you the tools you need to make better business decisions. So what are we going to learn today? Let's talk about the value of clean data. It's not just a list. Quantity versus quality, which is really more important. The USPS data sets, we'll talk about the basics and the limitations. And then, of course, improving your results, how to go a simple step further. Let's kick off with Direct Marketing 101, just as a brief refresher. You have to have the right message, the right offer, and the right list. Even copywriters know the fact is, without the right list, the most well-thought-out message really won't result in sales. With the right list, even a mediocre message with a decent offer will result in inquiries. So it's really about reaching the right people. With that being said, it's not just a list. You're mailing to people. You're looking to make a connection. And to reach a person, you need accurate data. Your recipients could be a customer, a prospect, a donor, contributor, alumni, etc. But they are all people. Make sure that your message speaks to their problem, their belief, or their cause. And don't forget to include a compelling offer. To make sure your hard work doesn't go to waste, clean up your list. Today you'll see just how much those bad records waste your money and reduce your response rates, and what you can do about it. Let's talk about a myth. I'm sure we've all heard this at some point. More is better. Just go ahead and send it. Maybe, just maybe, we'll reach an interested person. Facts are, the postman no longer makes every attempt to find the addressee. You know, back in the day, USPS carriers worked the same routes for years. They personally knew everyone on the route. If the address was a little off, they would still deliver the mail. And for the most part, these days are over. Carriers are retiring and being replaced by new people. But more importantly, USPS is doing everything it can to reduce costs. Reduced rate mail that doesn't pass addressing standards gets pulled out of the mail stream and returned or destroyed. If you're sending standard mail, you may have no idea how much is undeliverable unless you're paying for returns. And those costs really add up. So what exactly are the costs? Well, let's take a step back. What are the obvious costs? We know that costs can add up with printing, paper, and labor, the postage, and any return service and address correction fees. But these are just the mailing-related costs. And with standard mail, you don't even know how many undeliverables you're incurring unless you pay for a return service, and that can add up really, really quickly. So let's do the math. As an example, let's say you mail 10,000 pieces. Each piece costs about $1.50 to print and mail. And within this list, and this is a raw list, there are 2,200 undeliverable records, or about 22% of that list. So if we multiply $1.50, the cost of the mail piece, times the 2,200 undeliverable records, we have $3,300 in wasted money. And again, this is a raw list, so unless you're getting updates back into your database from some type of address correction service, you'll continue to have these same problems. And does 2,200 records seem high? Well, according to the USPS, 23.6% of all mail is addressed incorrectly. The quality of stored U.S. addresses declines 17% per year. Well, let's talk about the wasted budget. In this example, eliminating your 22% in deliverables would have saved you $3,300. So in that red portion here, this is your segment of your undeliverable records. We can see that's a pretty large chunk, or about, there we go. Let's talk about excluding those bad records and improving our return on investment. So on the left side here, let's say we mail all of our records. Our mailing cost is $15,000. Again, that's $1.50 times the 10,000 records that we're sending. And let's say with a 2% response rate, so we get a 2% response rate off that 10,000 records, we have a 10% close rate, your mailing could result in $20,000 in total sales. So that's the ultimate goal. So if we subtract the mailing costs from the sales that we incur on that mailing, our net gain is $5,000. But that's mailing everything, even the undeliverables. So let's say we just mailed the deliverable records. Our cost goes down because now we're eliminating those 2,200 records and we're sending 7,800 records. Our sales, again, off of these good records is $20,000. That's the 2% response rate with the 10% close rate. And our net gain is now $8,300 because we have reduced our cost by $3,300. So we've added that to our net gain. So just by removing the undeliverable records and reducing the mailing costs, you would get an improved return on investment without selling any more at all. In fact, the response rate on the undeliverable records is actually higher. On the deliverable records is actually higher. It's 2.56% at this point instead of 2%. So what about the costs that are not so obvious? We just talked about the cost of the raw material, the labor, the postage, but what about the cost of investigating and recovering the correct contact information? Losing out on sales opportunities, that could be thousands of dollars per client or prospect. You could incur customer service issues, obtain a bad reputation, and ultimately lose customers. So let's take a real-life example. I'm going to use Satori as an example here. So we send annual subscription renewal notifications for our software. But what happens if a customer doesn't receive the notification? And this is kind of an extreme example, but this really is what can happen if you're trying to reach someone, they don't receive the mail piece. So Satori incurs the additional cost of follow-up sales calls, and often we have to leave a message. If we can't reach that customer in time, the software will cease to function. Once it expires, the customer will have loss of access to their subscription, and it could ultimately shut down their mail production, resulting in customer service issues for the client and lost business. And Satori could lose out on a customer and future revenue. And again, this is an extreme example, but there is a very large impact if someone does not receive the mail piece. So let's calculate opportunity costs. Let's go back to those 2,200 undeliverable records. Let's focus on these guys. So what if you could reach these contacts? You've already seen that the response rate on this list is 2.56% off of just the records that are good, those 7,800. But if you had been able to reach those 2,200 contacts, how would that have increased that response rate? So nothing has changed to these graphs except for the final third graph on the far right, correct more records. So assuming that the newly corrected records convert to the same 2.56% response rate as the existing deliverables, with a 10% close rate, your mailing, if you were able to correct 20% of that list, would now result in over $25,000 of total sales. And this doubles your net gain. So this is just if you were able to correct another 2,000 records. So that would leave you with only about 200 undeliverables instead of 2,200. You would see here that your net gain nearly doubles over sending all the records. And this is really what customers are going to be focused on as well, is your total sales. So quality versus quantity. What's more important? The quality of your data will have a direct impact on the success of your mailing. Poor data means very poor response rates. More is not better. So which records should be excluded? Well, let's clean up the data. We'll start with the basics. Use a CAS-certified software to correct addresses and append the ZIP+4 code, and flag records with issues. So the CAS-certified software will standardize addresses and add missing address elements when possible. You'll find out exactly how many addresses can actually receive mail through delivery point validation. So it'll confirm if it's a valid delivery point. And then it'll flag records with issues. And this is where you can go beyond the basics to really start to improve your direct mail results. So it's going to flag records that have missing or invalid unit numbers, invalid street names or primary numbers, etc. And let's find the people who've moved. So each year, 40 million individuals, families, and businesses change addresses. That's 70 to 80% of these moves are reported to the USPS, and you need to use an authorized NCOA link service to update your database. So this is really the first step towards staying in touch with valuable contacts, donors, or customers. There's two service levels, one that updates moves up to 48 months old, and that's as far back as the USPS database will license anyone to go. And then there's other updates that go back 18 months, but both require an exact name and address to find a match. And is the master database being updated with the new addresses? So once the new addresses are located through the move service, is the master database that contains that information being updated with the new information? Because if not, after 48 months, your mail will be delivered to the wrong person. So let's talk about that. Moves over time. So within the first 12 months that someone moves, the mail will automatically be forwarded to the new address. After 12 months, so within that 12 to 48 month period, the mail is either returned to the sender or it's thrown away. So again, as I mentioned before, standard mail, there's no way to actually track those undeliverables unless you have a return service. So if you send it out and you don't have a return service, it's likely going to get thrown away. After 48 months, mail is delivered to the incorrect person because they have moved outside of that 48-month window, and it's a rolling database for the USPS. But thank goodness you've made some progress on that list. Your list is as clean as it can get using minimum required services. That's right, these services are required for earning bulk mail discounts, but the tricky part is getting this information back into your database for future use. How clean your list is really depends on the demographics and the quality of the list or how well it's been maintained over the years. And are you targeting people who are likely to be living in apartments, moving frequently, or passing away? Because these factors will determine just how much more cleansing will benefit your return on investment. So what has not been corrected? The USPS address correction data set has no names, no apartment numbers, and no other types of append. Addresses only. So the NCOA link service requires an exact match, like I mentioned on this slide. And what about SweetLink? So a common misconception of SweetLink is that it will update residential information, and it actually will not. It is business data only. SweetLink will apply suite numbers. So how about the hidden moves? Oftentimes, companies are most concerned about the people that don't provide a forwarding address, so they just tell the USPS that they that they've moved and they're no longer at the current address, but there's no forwarding address to find a match off of. But actually, the big concern should be the 20 to 30% of people in the U.S. who move annually and don't report anything to the USPS because it's not required by law. So people either forget, don't care, or really just don't want to be found. And some statistics even say up to 40% of people now are not filing moves with the post office. So let's break it down. What could those 2,200 contacts be of those undeliverable records? Some could potentially be apartment dwellers. They could be frequent movers, so maybe college students. They could be the elderly, or any other type of subset. So let's talk about improving our results. So how do we locate duplicates, deceased contacts, do not mail contacts, people who did not file a move with the USPS, and missing unit numbers? So USPS data sets are really the best place to start, but they are simply the very minimum. Additional data sources are needed to weed out records that aren't profitable or valuable, and enhancements can provide data that will complete missing contact information. So let's start with the duplicates. Have you ever received the same mail piece twice? If so, you're not alone. I actually did yesterday. I received my alumni newsletter from the university that I went to. I received 2 pieces of it, and pretty large newsletter, so it's probably worth about $3. And Dun & Bradstreet actually reports that duplicate records, duplicate rates of about 20% are not uncommon. And at the end of the day, it's wasteful and embarrassing, it's a poor experience for the recipient, and it takes away from the intended message. So let's flag and remove those records. Identify contacts that are deceased. So flag people who are no longer living. The match can be done off of phonetic name, gender, address, and suffix information. This is also Social Security Administration data. And this will help you to determine whether that contact should be removed from your database. It'll also allow you to make a decision whether you want to get in touch with another contact at that residence, maybe a spouse. But really this helps you to avoid damaging relationships, because when someone's passed away and another contact at that residence receives a mailing for the person who is deceased, it's embarrassing, and a lot of times it just hurts the relationship. So what about people who don't want to receive direct mail at all? There is a way to flag these contacts. The DMA hosts a do not mail database. These are all the people who have filed their information with the Direct Marketing Association as people who do not want to receive any direct mail, so you want to remove them. Focus on reaching the people who are receptive to receiving your message. And again, this is quality over quantity. And actually, if you're a DMA member, this is required by your membership agreement. So do your part to stave off more damaging federal regulations. You really do not want to mail to people who are filed on this list. Let's keep direct mail self-regulated, and ultimately don't waste your money or reputation sending mail to these people, because it's likely not to result in sales. Let's find more moves after NCOA. So locate those people, those 20 to 30, 40% of contacts who did not file a move with the USPS. An extended change of address service compiles moves from other sources. And it will update moves up to 60 months old. The sources are magazine and catalog subscriptions, insurance, utilities, and credit bureau databases. And if you haven't been updating your database with moves, an extended change of address service can identify some records in the lost year. So that lost year would be the difference between the NCOA 48-month database and the 60-month database of extended change of address services. So there's one more year you could potentially locate some people if you lost track of them. Append apartment numbers. Multi-unit buildings make up over 1/4 of U.S. housing. So you really want to complete residential addresses to reach more people on your target list. Having correct residential unit numbers is fundamental for good mailings. Given that over 1/4 of U.S. housing is in multi-unit buildings, this is especially true for the 8% of buildings with 2 to 4 units. Those since those secondary numbers are not included in the data set used by CAS processing. Upon completion of CAS processing, it's common for 5 to 10% of a mailing list to consist of addresses with either missing or invalid unit numbers. Despite the fundamental importance of unit data for deliverability, the USPS currently allows these addresses to be barcoded. So this gets tricky. That means that you can still qualify for automation discounts even if you can't ultimately reach those people. Unfortunately, while considered mailable, these mail pieces will almost certainly be undeliverable, either returned to sender or discarded, and this negatively impacts the success of your mailing. So now that we've gone through the process of address correction and some of the enhancements, let's say we've corrected 20% of that list. So now we have additional 2,000 records that are good. And just go back here real quick. There's always going to be a portion that will be undeliverable. There's always going to be some type of small segment that you can't completely correct, but you want to get as much as you possibly can and then likely just remove those undeliverables that are remaining. So at the end of the day, you want to protect your investment. Better contact information provides better results and accuracy. You invest time, money, and effort into every mailing. Ensure that the best results with the best contact data. So you have obtained, fostered, and maintained relationships with clients, leads, donors, etc. And a thorough scrub and a quick process through data enhancements will greatly improve the results of your marketing efforts, up to 20% and more. So as a summary, accurate contact data is the key to great results and success. Don't miss the mark on your next campaign with an oversight in bad data. Quality is much more important than quantity. Use USPS and non-USPS services simultaneously for best results. As next steps, schedule a delivery improvement analysis with us. You can send a request to our email, sales@satorisoftware.com, and your report will help you determine the health of your contact list and what you can do to improve direct mail results. I want to go ahead and thank you for your time. I'm going to go ahead and open up the call to Q&A, see what kind of questions we have here. So if you have questions at this time, go ahead and enter them in the dialog box on the right, and I'm going to go ahead and answer. So just would like to understand better, what you're seeing with your direct marketing campaigns, areas that you would like to see improved or additional questions you have. So I'm going to go ahead and wait for some questions here. So I have a question here about Snowbirds. So Snowbirds would be those contacts who are fortunate enough to move somewhere nice and warm during the winter, such as my grandma. We live up here in Seattle, and in the winter she goes down to Palm Springs. So a DSF squared database can help flag those records that move during the winter or kind of switch addresses, so they have two addresses that interchange. So you'd really want to use some type of DSF squared database to locate those people. That was a very good question. Thank you. So it doesn't look like there's any more questions. If you think of anything after the fact, go ahead and email us here at sales@satorisoftware.com or write down my information there. My name's Kristen Gregerson. I'm the Data Services Manager. Give me a call, we can go over things one-on-one. We're also going to post a copy of this webinar to our website, so the pre-recorded version. So if you need to go through it again or pass it on to other members of your organization, it should be posted within about 2 to 3 business days. And I really encourage you to do the delivery improvement analysis, because it's really going to help you to understand whether or not these enhanced services would make a difference within your data file, because as we mentioned, the cleanliness of the data really depends on the demographics, such as maybe if you're targeting older or younger folks, can also depend on how well that list has been maintained over the years. But really, like I mentioned, we believe in helping our customers have the tools and the information they need to make better business decisions. So whether that would actually improve your list. And there is going to be a short survey that will pop up at the end of this presentation. I encourage you to fill that out. We ask for additional feedback and comments. So if there are some webinars that you would like to see in the future, that feedback is always encouraged. We are looking for more topics to discuss, so industry relevant information. Definitely feel free to give us your thoughts and feedback, questions. We welcome all of it. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you again so much for your time, and I hope to see you again in our future webinars. Bye-bye.